Hi, this video will have a quick introduction into pivot tables in Excel. But before we do that, I'm going to be showing you the motivation of using pivot tables, since pivot tables are going to reduce the amount of work and the time that you will have to spend significantly in your operations. So let me share my data set. Let me go over my data set, the example data set I'm going to work on with you very shortly. We do have, in this data set, we do have 3 columns. So we do have different people in our data set. And we do have categorization on their smoking levels and drinking levels. So these are codes that probably they interviewed these people and then they shortened certain categories with these acronyms. And here are the explanations of these. So N stands for none, O stands for occasional, H stands for heavy, S stands for smoker, and D stands for drinker, right? So for example, whenever you see NS, it means no smoker or non-smoker, right? Or OD means occasional drinker, so on and so forth. All right. So let's assume that we would like to do some categorical data analysis, and we would like to see the relationship between smoking and drinking for each person, or maybe across the entire set of people that we have in this data set. A nice thing, a nice function that we learned before was count if function. But it only works on a single column or row that you're interested in counting. And countifs function is also out there that's going to help us do the counting work on multiple rows or multiple columns. So how does it work? I already did the calculations for you. So if you just click on a single cell, what this function specifically does is it counts the drinkers, non-drinkers, so this is the non-drinker category, and it also counts the non-smoker. So basically, we do have 2,118 people who is non-smoker and the non-drinker. All right, that's what this formula does. If you look at how the selection criteria works, so in count, if remember, you had one selection criteria range, and you also had the criteria itself, basically, what you were looking for, and then that was it. Here with countifs function, you do have multiple, you can select multiple selection criteria, so a selection range. Like in this case, I'm looking for the NS in column B and D in column C. That's what these two are saying, right? So I am highlighting B2 to until the end of the B column, and C2 to until the end of the C column. I'm looking for people who are non-drinker and non-smokers at the same time, okay? So the rest of the table is populated by using the similar approach, but this time, for example, this is occasional smoker and heavy drinkers. So we are counting them up, okay? That's how it works. So if you would like to also convert these numbers in percentages, you could do that, but you have to do some work on it. And this table shows the percentages of row totals. So basically, you do look at you do sum the numbers in the row, in a single row, right? And you divide these numbers by that sum, and then you get the percentages here. So here, why do we use this information? It's helpful because now we are looking only for the non-drinkers, right? 78% of the non-drinkers, for example, belongs to non-smokers category, and 16% of the occasional smokers, they belong to the non-drinkers, right? So on and so forth. And if you like to group them under column percentages, you can also do that too, right? This time, this column represents that 43.1% of the non-smokers, they belong to non-drinkers category. 42% belongs to occasional drinker, and 14.9% belongs to heavy drinker category. Okay, and you can definitely do some visualization. You just need to select the entire data and then hit the bar chart in Excel. It will give you these charts. All right, so why do we need pivot tables? It will make things a lot easier. That's the reason. First of all, how do you populate a pivot table? Well, make sure that you select your data set, okay, and then click insert, okay, pivot table. All right, so you see that your selected table is already highlighted in here. You could use an external data source to populate the pivot table as well. It gives Excel gives the option to have your pivot table anywhere on this worksheet tab, or you can create a new tab and then put it in there. If you click on existing worksheet, you will have to select the starting point of that pivot table. So since this worksheet tab is very crowded, I'm going to create a new worksheet and then I will hit OK. All right, so it created a new worksheet, sheet 1. It gave me the space that pivot table is going to be starting here. And on the right, it opens up the pivot table field list for me. Okay, this is called pivot table field list. So I do have 4 important fields that I have to be filling in. But today I'm going to be, well, in this video, I'm going to be showing you rows, columns, and values. So pivot table is just any other table. And it will be having some rows and some columns, and whatever you are measuring in those and columns are going to be in the values. You can implement certain filters, as I showed in previous videos, that you could just do data filter, and then you can start filtering the columns and the rows or the entire table, right? In pivot tables, you could also do that in many different ways, and whatever your filter is, it's going to be showing up here. Okay, once you created your pivot table, you could drag these field names. So those field names are basically the column names that you saw in our data, right? And then you can drag them and then place them anywhere here. It's drag and drop approach. For example, I would like to see, let's see, what was the structure of our tables? So drinkers on the rows, smokers on the columns. So let's stick to the same one. Okay, drinkers on the rows. You can change it, it doesn't matter. And smokers are on the columns, right? So as you can see, it created this small table where it says my row labels were HD, ND, and OD, heavy drinkers, non-drinkers, and occasional drinkers. And my column labels were belonging to the smokers, right? Heavy smokers, non-smokers, and occasional smokers. Well, what am I doing here? Am I going to just count the number of persons or add them up? Well, I will be playing on person, so let me get the person here on the values, right? Well, it created my nice pivot tables. What do these numbers mean, right? So they are looking very high numbers. Well, if you just focus on the bottom right, it says that it is summing up the person column, right? What is in person column? Let's go to person column. Oh, those are just IDs, right? So person 1, person 2, person 3. Summing them up means just nothing to me, right? I should better count them instead of summing them up. Well, how do I fix that? Well, you do see that simple information button right next to where it says sum of person. Just click on it. It says summarized by count, average, max, min, product, count numbers, STD, standard deviation, variance, so on and so forth, right? So you just go ahead and need to count these persons, right? And you can play with this, the name as well. Well, let's go ahead and change the sum to count and hit enter. Do these numbers look correct, or the ones that we obtained before? Let's double check. Let's check HD and HS. Intersection of HD and HS. Well, 733. Yes, that's correct. That's a quick sanity check. All right, so instead of going through all these countifs, selecting different columns multiple times, making the total, you just can do the same analysis with a couple clicks in pivot tables. It's very nice. And I'm going to keep exploring more with you on pivot tables. In this video, you will see how things can get very Very simple, very straightforward in a very fast time. So let's assume you would like to also check out, remember this is telling us, let's make some notes here. These are number in each categories. All right. Let's make this as a note, and then let's assume that I would like to get grand, well, percentage in grand total. What I mean by that, can I calculate, like for example, 733 as a percentage of the entire people in this data set? Well, all I have to do is divide this 733 by the grand total here, right? Well, you'll see that pivot tables is going to have an automatic way of doing that for me. What I do is I copy my pivot table that I generated, and then I paste them here. And then when you click on it, this is a new pivot table, or you could do another selection of this data, inserting pivot table, inserting pivot table here, and then selecting this range, and it would create another pivot table for you. Or you could just copy and paste your pivot table anywhere else. You can now play with it. So what I want to do is I would like to show these numbers as a percentage of the grand total. So I can come over here again where it says count of person. Yes, I'm still going to be counting persons in each category, but I'm going to show the data. It says no calculation. So it says we did the change under summarize by here, right? Under show data as percentage of grand total. All right, that is the one that I'm looking for, and I hit OK. Yeah, and that worked out just fine. So it is basically calculating the percentage of people in each subcategories with respect to the grand total. Right? It's very nice. Basically, yeah, it is doing the operation correctly. If you would like to double check, let's pick the number in the middle. Let's divide this by this guy. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it is giving me the correct 34.18%. Yep, that works. All right. In our original data, what we had also, we showed the percentages of row totals, right? So we were actually looking at the percentage of smokers in drinkers category, in each sub-drinkers category. Can we do it in pivot tables? Yes, we can. All I have to do is basically I will just copy this one more time and create a new pivot table. What I will do is I can change the label first here too. So it says count of person here and count of person here as well. So this is no longer count of person. Let's change it to percentage person. And now this one is going to be, let's make another note here. It says it's going to be percentage row total, or percent row total. All right. And how do I do the change? Again, I need to go to the count of person. I'm still going to count it and show data as where it says percentage of row total. And I hit enter. Yeah, as you can see now, I am looking at for each row, HD, ND, and OD, and now my numbers are telling me what percentage of different smoking categories are belonging to a specific drinking subcategory, right? And I can do it for each column, right? Let's do it for each column. Okay, again, just need to copy the pivot table, paste it here, and do the work. So whenever you are on an empty cell, this pivot table pane is not showing up. And whenever you are on a pivot table, this will, Excel is going to bring up this pivot table pane so that you could do the selections correctly. So that's kind of nice. So we were going to show the data as not row column, but percentage of column total this time. Yes, and does the trick for us. Now this time we can look at the drinker subcategories for each smoking category. All right, that's something cool. Another quick question is, can you show multiple values here? Can you, for example, show both the numbers and the respective percentages here? Yes, you can. Let me copy this original pivot table here and then paste it here. All right, what I want to do is I would like to also represent this 733 as a percentage like I calculated here. And I would like to also show it on the same pivot table. How do I do it? Well, as I said, so you're not going to change the structure, right? So your row labels are still going to be the drinkers category. Your column labels are going to be still smoking categories. What you will do is you will add another sub column here that keeps these numbers as a percentage. Well, and we do keep our numbers under the values pane here, right? So we will still do some work on persons. We can just drag person one more time and put it right under the count of person. Typically, it's going to pick up the sum function first, and it does sum them up. And then, as I said, we don't really use the sum. It doesn't really mean anything. Instead, I'm going to be counting it, but I'm going to go and show the data as the percentage of grand total. Okay. There you go. Actually, now it does work for me. So what it does is it does show me the number of person in each subcategory and their respective percentages, right? The names are confusing. It says count of person two. What I will do is I will again go to this information box and I'm going to update this. This is actually percent of person, right? All right. It does do the work for me. Okay, cool. Can you do a quick filtering on these pivot tables? Yes, you can. And then the way that you do it is by simply clicking on these filtering arrows, right? You can just select a certain column or certain row in this case, right? And then you can see what's going on here. It is changing the grand total. If you select more, it is adding more, right? Now let's select them all and let's do the same thing in the columns. You can play with them the way that you like, okay? And what is nice about it is you can also do charting on pivot tables. So if you click on your pivot table, anywhere, so you just need to go to pivot table and then bring up the field list. If this is not coming up, the pivot table field list is not coming up, go to click anywhere on the pivot list and go to pivot table analyze and make sure that this field list is checked. Right next to it, you do have the pivot chart. Click on the pivot chart. It is going to bring out this chart automatically to you. What is also nice about it, if you do have any changes on your table, on your pivot table, like in this case, you just get rid of the HS, right? And it is going to do the modifications on your pivot chart. Well, should be, but I think it might be. There's another way of doing some filtering on this chart, and that's called slicer. And again, go to pivot table analyze, go to insert slicer. So it says which row or column or values you would like to have some slicer operations to do some work on. I'm going to doing on smoking and drinking, and I will be clicking on it. So as you can see, all smoking and drinking subcategories are selected now. What you can do is now we can just get rid of smoking. I can limit only smoking category to HS, heavy smokers, and you can keep all the drinking subcategories here. Actually, this is the way that you can actually you can make the real-time changes on the pivot tables as well, right? So now it got rid of all other smoking categories other than HS, but it kept all the drinking categories here. Let's include only NS here. If you'd like to include more, you just need to hit Command or Control key and then start the selections. Now we can have like 2 categories selected here. Let's get rid of the 2 drinking categories, or maybe add 2 drinking categories together simultaneously. You see how the table is changing at the same time the chart is changing as well. Well, the graphical user representation of the slicer function might be different on PCs, but the functionality is going to be the same. If you're having any issues with PC, just let me know. And then let's say that you like to, like you did some changes and you like to get rid of those changes, you just need to click on clear filter and it's going to go back to the original one. And how do you get them out of your way? You just need to just delete them, all right? Select the slicers and hit delete, and that's it. You could also generate multiple different pivot tables on the same spreadsheet. All you need to do is to go to pivot. First, make sure that your cell is on a pivot table and hit pivot chart. It will bring up the chart for you. It's going to represent whatever it sees on the table. Okay, let's do one for this guy. Pivot table analysis, pivot chart. There you go. Our traditional way works out just fine as well. If you are on this table, you can go to Insert, Bar Chart, oh, Instagram bar chart, and then yeah, it is also going to work like that too. Or you can simply go to the pivot chart and then plot your pivot charts. Okay. That's about what I want to show you on the initial introduction into pivot tables. Many people use them on their daily work, and then it has been around for a while now, and those are very useful, very insightful way of making sense out of your data, especially if your data is categorical or mixed, both categorical, numerical, or textual data. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you on the next video.